Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. God bless Texas. How many months has it been since we've been in a room like this? Too many, I don't know. March, April, February, whatever it's been. So welcome back. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for braving the storm. Thank you for being here. Thank you for helping our oil and gas industry thrive today. Our chairman, Russell Stewart, he wasn't able to make it today. So I'm the vice chairman. My name is Justin Lurie. So I am helping out today. Now, you might have noticed there are some bright lights in here, some cameras, a whole table full of guys, a lot of equipment, and of course, a bunch of Apple computers. So we want to thank OGGN. Really thank these guys a lot. And thank you, Mark LaCour. Thank you, Warren Spiewak. Mark has been, he's had this idea, I think, for years maybe, and it's great to see today it to come to fruition and to see this be a very successful event. So thank you very much to OGGN. Thank you to Mark. Okay. Now, before I introduce Warren Spiewak, he's going to be the moderator for today's panel. Just a quick little thing. I met him recently over Zoom and then over the phone, and I've gotten to see that he's a very easygoing guy. And during conversation, I called him boss, and he said, "No, don't call me boss. Think of me as a friend, but think of me as a friend who's never wrong." So with that, I'd like to welcome up Mr. Warren Spiewak.
Thank you. So really neat to be here. First off, thank you everyone who actually drove out, showed up, and are sitting here at these tables. It means a lot to all of us. And also, thank you to the viewers. This is something where we built a system that we didn't even know if it's gonna work. And even now, we're just waiting for stuff to go wrong. I mean, what could go wrong? We have internet, we're downtown Houston, we have a camera crew, we have mics. It's a little edgy, right? But we're doing it, and so far, we're seeing comments from all over the globe that are attending with us right here today. So it's a really neat kind of trailblazing moment for the oil and gas industry, for OGGN, and for all of us here at the API. So thank you so much. And here's what I will tell you. I am a podcast host at OGGN. I'm also the director of insurance and risk. And we see a lot of things come across our desks. It's constant. There's companies that are sharing the latest and greatest. 2020 has been a tough year for all of us, but something came across my desk just a few weeks ago, and it's what we're going to share today, which is RECONAFRICA. It's really an incredible story. It's one of these things that as soon as I learned it, I had to share it with my friends, my family, and I was like, no way, but it is yes way. So I'm really excited for everyone and everyone viewing on LinkedIn right now. So real quick, just a little bit of housekeeping items. I would like to ask anyone who has served in the U.S. Marine Corps to please stand up for us today. Anyone who's been in the military, U.S. Marine Corps. Amazing. Thank you, guys. You know, today is the birthday of the U.S. Marine Corps. It's 245 years. That's the birthday today. And you guys don't look a day over 240. You guys look really good. I won't make any hip jokes with Mark, you know. Anyway, so today is going to be a real treat. Today I'm very excited to have the opportunity to introduce you to RECONAFRICA. In my opinion, what you're about to hear is extraordinary. I would like to take a quick moment before we kick it off, is to just acknowledge a couple people that are in the audience right now. We've got Jay Park, who is the chairman of RECONAFRICA, and we also have procurement and logistics manager John Boudreau, and SVP of investor relations Doug Allen, who's going to be standing in. Doug, where are you? There's Doug Allen. Doug will be standing in for the founder, Craig Stenke, who is not with us today, but we are going to have Doug fill in, and it's going to be really amazing. So stunningly, RECONAFRICA holds licenses in over the entire newly discovered deep sedimentary Kavango Basin in northeast Namibia and northwest Botswana. They have 8.75 million contiguous acres under license. Aerially, that's larger than the Eagle Ford here in Texas. As you will hear from Dan Jarvie shortly, it is estimated that this basin has generated up to 120 billion barrels of oil. And yes, that's billion. And yes, that made me feel like I was Austin Powers for a minute, with a B, okay? So it's billion. On behalf of OGGN, I am pleased to introduce you to today's esteemed panel, who I'm going to ask to come join me up here on the stage. We're going to have a panel right here, starting with Doug Allen, who will be presenting directly from RECONAFRICA. Hello, hello. I should shake your hand here. Yes. Take a seat. And I'm going to have you sit over there just because I'm going to put you in Craig's seats. We're adapting. That's terrific. And then also I have Scott Evans. So Scott is the CEO of RECONAFRICA. His background is with Halliburton and ExxonMobil. Says a lot that he's up here with us. Thank you, Scott. It's going to be an incredible story. Bill Cathy, he's an acclaimed geophysicist who has said that in the experience of earth-field technology, nowhere in the world is there a sedimentary rift basin this deep that does not produce commercial hydrocarbons. So looking forward to hearing more about that. And then lastly, Dan Jarvie. Dan, thank you. So Dan is a source rocks expert and the former chief geochemist at EOG, who, as I have already noted, has some estimates that I believe you will find very interesting. So everything that you're about to hear, some of it's going to be hard to believe. We've given them the challenge to prove it, right? And what you'll find is that just like what our experience is that this could be extremely, extremely interesting for you, an investment opportunity as well. And we have stationed booklets outside the door at your desk. Doug Allen is going to be a major contact that I put business cards on everyone's table for that. So with that, Doug, I'm reading my notes. Doug, I'll kick it off with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. My name is Doug Allen. As Warren has said, we appreciate your interest and attention today. And for those of you online, thank you very much for participating online. As Warren has said, my name is Doug Allen. I'm the Senior Vice President of Investor Relations for RECONAFRICA, and I'm standing in for our founder, Craig Stenke, who is unable to be with us today. I am going to run through a couple of slides just to set the discussion for you. The first slide, courtesy of the lawyers, is the forward-looking statement, and you've all seen these disclaimers before, but please take a minute and peruse those when you have a chance. As Warren said, we have licenses over 8.75 million acres in northeast Namibia and northwest Botswana. The genesis of this opportunity was founder Craig Stenke's purchase of a database dating back as far as 2013. And he got Dan Jarvie involved back in that era and had a number of geologists retained to basically survey the database. And as they combed the database and completed their due diligence, the opportunity in northeast Namibia rose to the fore. And Craig was in Windhoek negotiating the licenses that we now possess in northeast Namibia for 6.3 million of the 8.75 million acres. And Craig would admit, as perhaps all of you know, in the oil and gas business, sometimes luck plays a part in your success. And Craig would admit that there was a good portion of luck here because the government of Namibia said to him at the time in 2013, almost as a by the way, we've shot an aeromagnetic survey over a large portion of the country, including the region that you're proposing to license, but nobody's ever bought the aeromag survey, so it's never been assessed. Would you like to do so? I think Craig put it on his credit card immediately. And as you'll hear in a few minutes, he sent it to Bill Cathy here in Houston, Texas. And the rest, as they say, is history. And I'm excited for you to have the opportunity to listen to not one, but two acclaimed geoscientists today here on the panel. Subsequent to further aeromag analysis, the decision was made to license the continuation of the Kavango Basin in northwest Botswana. And so the 6.3 million acres became 8.75 million acres with the license this spring in Botswana of an incremental 2.45 million acres. As Warren said, this is an area that is aerially similar to the Eagle Ford here in Texas, which you would all be very, very familiar with. We're excited to have the opportunity to work with both the Namibian and the Botswana governments. As I'll explain in a minute, these are stable jurisdictions. They have strong petroleum and mining codes, and they have excellent fiscal regimes. As you'll hopefully get a flavor for on the panel today, but when you have a chance to read more detail in the handout, we have an enormously successful and accomplished team. Scott has said to me on occasion that he feels sometimes like the manager of an all-star baseball team. There are a group of acclaimed geoscientists involved with RECONAFRICA, and I would ask you to ask yourselves, what do they see? And I believe that what they see is the opportunity to be on a team that's opening up a new basin, and I think that presents tremendous opportunities. We have a strong balance sheet for a company in the oil and gas sector. We had a marketed deal in August, and if you cast your mind back to this spring and summer, you'll all be more than aware of the uncertainty that has been cast over the oil and gas sector. Notwithstanding that uncertainty, we had a tremendous success in a capital raise, and the benefit of that to investors is that the investment case has been meaningfully de-risked because of the twice upsized 23 million Canadian that was raised. We are catalyst rich. We are going to spud the first well of a 3-well program in late December. Because of Hurricane Eta, the ship that is transporting the rig has been a few days delayed, but it is literally on the cusp of being, the rig is on the cusp of being shipped to Namibia, and that's consistent with the time frame of spudding the first well in the second half of December. I give you a summary cap table there on the right, which I encourage you to review at your leisure. I positioned Namibia for you here on this slide. It's between South Africa on the south and Angola to the north. As you will be aware, Angola is a 1.3, 1.4 million barrel a day contributor to OPEC. And as you'll also be aware, the majors and super majors have already vetted Namibia and are active in the offshore. RECONAFRICA is basically looking to be active on the onshore, and that's what this presentation is all about. Namibia is a former German colony. It's had its independence from South Africa since 1990. It's a stable democracy. And as I said, it has a strong petroleum regime and strong fiscal code for the oil and gas industry. It is very active in resource development, very established diamond industry in Namibia, established uranium industry, and they are actively encouraging responsible development of the oil and gas industry. Botswana is the longest serving democracy in Africa, been a democracy since 1966.
Again, thanks to everybody for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm Bill Cathy, president of Earthfield Technology here in Houston. And since 1987, we have specialized in the analysis of magnetic data around the world and have used that data to define the depth and structural configuration of the basement floor of sedimentary basins. Since 87, we've worked virtually every single known petroleum basin on the planet at one time or another. We've done countless mining jobs as well. And so we've worked the planet over the last 33 years pretty extensively. We have quite an extensive client list as well that includes all the majors and large independents from around the world. So we've done these types of basement analysis, which is defining the sedimentary thickness of a basin for many, many years. We use magnetic data primarily to do these studies, and we use our own proprietary software that will do depth estimates to the crystalline basement rock that lines these basin floors. Our preferred method is Werner deconvolution. It's a technique that's been around for decades, but we've got our own proprietary version that we think is just superior to that's being used by magnetic professionals around the world. What Werner does is it basically imports measured magnetic data and attempts to fit a couple of idealized structural geologic models to the measured data. And when it can inversely model that data set, it'll output a depth estimate. And these depth estimates will include the XY positions, the depth, the dip, and the apparent magnetic susceptibility. So again, this is a very, very well-established technique with geophysicists, and it's been used for many decades. We think using magnetic data to image the basement structure and the depth of the basement in a basin is an ideal tool. We need to know what the depth to basement is in a new frontier area, because if it's really petroleum geology at its basics is how thick of a sedimentary section might you encounter. The thicker the section, the higher probability that you're going to have commercial reserves of hydrocarbons located in that basin. Why magnetics is such a fantastic tool is simply with this chart that's displayed up on the screen right now. It is a chart that measures the magnetic susceptibilities of rock samples taken from thousands of samples around the world. What the magnetic susceptibility is it is the magnetic mineral content of a rock. Igneous rocks, which make up the basement, the floor of these basins, has orders of magnitude higher magnetic mineral contents than do sedimentary rocks. And so anytime that you can use magnetic data, it's going to image these igneous rocks very, very well. For those of you that aren't familiar with magnetic data and how it's acquired by flying a grid of lines across a survey area, typically at very low altitudes, with a magnetic sensor either sticking out of the rear of the plane or off the wingtips. And the sensors are so sensitive that they measure very, very minute differences in the Earth's ambient magnetic field. And typically are taking samples every 100 feet along these sample lines. So you get very high resolution data. So being such high resolution tools, we have imaged basement at over 35,000 feet in countless basins around the world. And this has always been a very effective tool to do that. In a nutshell, our analysis approach starts with taking measured magnetic data. We integrate gravity data, topography data, other geologic and geophysical data when available. Unfortunately, in northeast Namibia, there wasn't a lot of additional geophysical data or geologic data because no wells had ever been drilled up there. So we took the data, we ran our depth estimation profiles, we analyzed those profiles ultimately to produce a detailed depth of basement map. What that does then is give you an immediate calculation of how much sediment is within that basin. In 2014, we were asked by RECONAFRICA team to take a look at some high resolution magnetic data that the Namibian government had flown over the country. Doug had indicated that they had flown on the entire country with lines spaced 200 meters apart. So a really high resolution data set. So after started looking and working with this data, we quickly realized that this is absolutely some of the best data that we've ever had the chance to analyze. And we're very, very pleased with what we were going to be producing out of that data set. The area, of course, that we had been flown and analyzed was an area that the RECONAFRICA geologists had suspected of containing a Permian age rifted basin. And so this analysis was to either confirm or deny whether that basin existed. And that was kind of the premise that we were brought in under. We did a series of magnetic profiles across the basin, basically every flight line. And what we discovered was that we indeed do see a very, very thick sedimentary pile, up to 30,000 plus feet of sediments. Of course, the thicker the section, the more probability you have for having a world-class source rock, the world-class reservoir rock, and structures that might actually be hydrocarbon exploration targets. So after our examination, and the map that's shown up on the screen is the depth of basement map. Those blue areas are the deep basinal areas that we interpreted from the magnetic data. The red areas are where the basement is very, very shallow. A secondary but a very important part of our analysis was to see, okay, if we did indeed determine that there was a sedimentary basin present, do we see any large structures? When I mean large structures, I'm looking for a big positive uplift. because these positive uplifts are what's going to trap hydrocarbons after they've been generated. And lo and behold, we've seen in the basin that there are numerous large structures that might contain lots of hydrocarbons, and that's what got us excited, and that was the remainder of our work. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Evans, the CEO of Recon. He's going to discuss the various aspects of the petroleum geology of this newly defined Kavango Basin. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Bill. So we know we have a basin. We know that it's a deep basin. We know we can see structures in it. So what I'm going to address quickly is how did it form? What's the fill? And then start talking about what Bill alluded to, which is the structures. To be very clear, we're looking at this as a conventional reservoir play. A lot of us who have been working in the States for onshore a while haven't heard the word conventional play, but this is a conventional reservoir play. That makes it even more exciting. So what I'm going to be showing you is several slides that came out of the recently completed Houston Geological Society and Petroleum Society of Great Britain joint session on opportunities in Africa. These sessions have been going on for a while. This paper is by Jim Grenaff and some of his authors that kind of highlight the integration of the regional geology, the aeromag work that we've seen, and the regional paleogeography. So in the lower right corner, you have the map that Bill showed you. That's a depth of basement map. And we're focused on the right side, the Kavango Basin. If you look at the long cross section, this is across that entire region, and you can see on the right side the Kavango Basin. The Kavango Basin shows considerable structuring, and this is tied into a rift system called the Southern Trans-Africa Rift System. Again, first papers that came to light by Jim and other Duncan McGregor in the UK, really just in 2016. So again, late-breaking academic work as well for the Kavango Basin. Regional timing has this as being initiated in early Permian. So it's a little hard to see, but the light blue color in that cross-section is Permian fill. So again, for those of us who've worked in West Texas, we know what the sea level curves are like, and we know that if you have a basin opening in early Permian, you're going to get a deposition of deeper marine rocks. So that's sort of the setting of the basin. So again, showing a page from the recent publication. The left side shows the extent of the Southern Trans-Africa Rift System. For those of you who've worked Africa, you know that rift systems are responsible for all of the onshore hydrocarbons, or certainly the great majority. This rift system goes kind of southwest to northeast, coast to coast, intersects the East Africa Rift System, which is probably the most famous, 2/3 of the way towards the East Coast. So this series of rifts are what created the Kavango Basin. Now, during the opening of the basin, the Karoo supergroup was deposited. Now, some of you may recognize the Karoo as being a significant gas shale resource down in South Africa, which it is. It's a stunning gas resource that hasn't been developed yet. But the stratigraphy of the Karoo is pretty well identified down there and from outcrops. And again, those who've worked the Permian, the lower part is mainly lacustrine, deeper marine section, eventually grading up into clastics in this area, coarsening up. So we have the grade setup that one might say analogous to the Wolfcamp and the Sprayberry in a very, very loose sense that we see in the States. So we have a structure system, we have the fill, and then if we just step back to look at it again on a regional setting, here's Southern Africa. We've done the paleogeographic work to show that where we are in the Kavango Basin is at the intersection of major Karoo depositional areas and the Southern Trans-Africa Rift System. So that's what's got us excited. Again, the lower picture just shows the surface expression of this rift system. You don't see it where we are because we're under the Kalahari Desert. And again, that's why the basin has not yet been evaluated. Last picture for me is, again, all petroleum geologists, we end up working towards play maps. So this map is meant to show the areas that are, let's call them areas of basin fill, source areas, and the areas that are uplifted and could be areas under closure. So we have across this basin, quite a few of these. The dominant structuring is going to be tilted fault blocks. And there's various structural styles associated with that. So the stippling area in yellow shows those tilted fault blocks. We have a 3-well program that's starting in sort of the west central part of the Namibian area that our rig is on its way to go start. We do have a rig. We bought this rig back at the beginning of the year, had it refitted and put a top drive and some other things on it up in the Henderson yard. It's now in boxes and half in the port of Houston, half on a trucks getting there. The ship's going to leave probably now a week from now, delayed by the hurricane, as Doug said. And then our first wells will spud at the end of the year, all between 12 and 13,000 feet to open up the Kavango Basin. And with that, to me, the creme de la creme, when you look at petroleum geology, is the source rocks. What's there? And for that, I'm going to hand it over to Dan.
Good afternoon. You ready for a training course in geochemistry? Okay, I hope so. Okay. So I really wanted to start with the background information so you can understand how I arrived at the numbers, okay? If I could just flash up the numbers and walk away, that would be pretty easy. But when you talk about total organic carbon, if you look at investor relation reports and everything, you see the TOC is 3%, the TOC is 5%. You know what? That tells me nothing, because you have to understand the hydrogen content to go along with that. So you see this TOC model broken into a hydrogen rich, that's the green part of that generative organic carbon, and a dark part that really has no generative potential. So what's the difference between a good source rock and a bad source rock? That green part. If the green is higher, you're going to have a high kerogen type, high hydrogen index. Hydrogen index is a relative measure of the hydrogen content. And remember, to form hydrocarbons, you need hydrogen, okay? I'd rather it be called hydrogen carbons, but nonetheless, okay? So what happens with maturation? Well, with maturation, what happens is, of course, you generate oil. Part of that carbon that is in that oil is expelled eventually, okay? Some of it's retained in the source rock and potentially cracked to gas. But what happens is the TOC decreases. Why does the TOC decrease? Because you've converted that generative organic carbon, that hydrogen-rich portion, to hydrocarbons, okay? So that occurs with expulsion. Now, the problem we have here looking at the Kavango Basin is we're starting with the lower part of the slide, okay? We're starting with something that's already converted, and we're trying to get back to the original. And so I have to make some assumptions about about how to do this. And many of you know I've shown this multiple times, anything from the Barnett Shale to the Eagle Ford to the Wolfcamp and so forth. But this is the approach I took. So I'm looking at the conversion extent and computing back to the original TOC. So we have two great analogs. As Scott mentioned, we have the Karoo Basin down in South Africa. As he also mentioned, Shell was going to pursue that for shale gas, big potential. What was the status of the TOCs? You can see these TOC values are great. There's virtually no generative organic carbon, none of that green portion left. What does that mean? The kerogen's been converted to hydrocarbons, and so it's a gas play. When you see something like this, when I looked at the Barnett Shale and I saw a hydrogen index initially of say 500, and I saw a value in different parts of the basin of 50, I know we're in the gas window, okay? So this is why one reason Shell was pursuing it. It's also brittle rock and the like, but we're not so much interested in the type of play that they were after. We're interested in understanding the conversion. So on the right-hand part of the slide, I've restored that TOC to what I think are very conservative estimates. Okay, how did I go about this? Well, I had to look at the thermal maturity. It was cooked to the hilt, so I can't go to the 98% conversion level because the numbers just get screwy. So I use 90% conversion, which I think is quite conservative. And so you can see I restored the green portion, and I come up with about 358 for a hydrogen content. That is, again, that part that can contribute to hydrocarbons. Okay, and you see the difference in that TOC is only 1.63%. That's all generative organic carbon. That was, in this case, all converted to petroleum, that is oil and gas, and yields about 460 million BOE per acre foot. I mean, that's a nice source rock, even at that low HI. So the other data that we have is a lot closer to home. So we were down in South Africa. Now this is in Western Namibia, onshore. Okay, let's not confuse this with offshore, which is an entirely different system. This is a Permian, lower Permian system that we're looking at. And so in the 1960s, I believe it was, Tusha drilled a well and took core, the ST1 well. And you can see some pictures of the black shale. It's restricted marine and or possibly lacustrine. That word restricted tells you something very specifically, and you geologists understand this. This tells you that you have anoxic conditions, great for preservation of organic matter, great for preservation of that hydrogen that I like so much. And so we can see that we have a very good system that is not buried as deep. You can see the depths here from 1,300 to 1,500 meters, but still a depth or a thickness of over 200 meters. So now we're moving, as Bill and Scott both showed, we're moving to the east. I get my directions. Nonetheless, that's why I'm a geochemist. I don't know north or south. Okay. Moving to the east, you can see that some of the sections that Bill and Scott showed were buried much deeper. So what that means, you have more of that exposure to the radiogenic heat flow. You cook that green part of the organic matter and you convert it to hydrocarbons. Okay, so this is our basis for going forward and expecting these beautiful source rocks in the Kavango Basin. This is the way I approach this. This is an industry standard software. Now, I can do my own calculations and get the same answer, but I thought for a presentation to investors and the like, I needed to use something that was commercial. And so this is a program called Kenex, made by a former ARCO geologist who is now a basin modeling expert. And what I did was I took a rather conservative thermal history. Now, this is not a burial history. This is simply a thermal history. So I said, okay, let's cook this rock with these two types of source rocks at 2 degrees C per million year. So again, just an arbitrary constant heating rate. I took two source rocks, one making a marine shale and the other being lacustrine. And I said, you're going to contribute 50% each, okay? So I like to do things in 100 foot. So I set this up at 50 foot apiece, okay? When I was at EOG, you know, if you say barrels of oil per acre foot are nice, but when you say there's 30 million per section, that seems to get more attention. I don't know why, okay? And so when I did this, you can see, as I put this together, I had an average hydrogen index of 358, just like I proposed out of South Africa from that restoration, and a TLC of only 3.75%. So this is where these numbers are coming from. Now, if you understand that 358, if you divide 358 by 1,200, that tells you the amount of hydrocarbons that can be generated from that, okay? It gives you an idea of the hydrogen content, okay? So this is just continuing on with the model because Craig's always asking me, well, how much oil? Where's the oil? How much gas is there going to be? What's going on here? So here, a nice pretty cartoon, right? Bill has all the nice graphics, so I had to have a couple color slides in here, but nonetheless, you can see that this system, using that heating rate, those two source rock intervals, generates primarily oil, of course, in the early oil window, generates a bit of gas. And this, I think this is commonly misunderstood. Every source rock generates gas. Okay, you generate more gas when you start cracking oil to gas at very high maturity. That gas is extremely important in lowering viscosity and mobilizing the petroleum and ultimately expelling it. So obviously a pressure role. But you can see later at higher temperatures, which we're not particularly interested in, above 1.2%, you start switching primarily to gas in this primary process. The next slide is the crux of the matter. Believe me, when I ran through this with those source rocks and came up with some of these numbers, I said, I don't think Craig's going to believe me. Okay. but it's very pragmatic. It's arithmetic. And I put these tables in so you can see how I approached it, both in terms of thickness and the extent of conversion. But that extent of conversion is basically thermal maturity, how cooked it is. It started at a certain value and it's 50% converted or 75% converted. Well, based on the data from South Africa and from the western part of Namibia, somewhere between 300 and 500 feet is a reasonable thickness to use. And you can see the barrels of oil per acre foot, I think is 49 to 75 approximately. Yeah, you know, I knew I was getting old when I went in the library and couldn't tell which end of the syringe to inject in the GC. So nonetheless, something comes with age. I am retired now, by the way, so you got to bear with an old guy. More important then is the barrels of oil per acre foot. I'd like to convert this to per section, okay, per square mile. And you can see, how do we adjust this? You know, in the unconventional systems, really the source rock systems, you're looking at how converted it is and what's the net thickness and so forth. Well, this is so massive and so broad. What I did was, based on the input from Scott and Bill, was I used 12% of the entire acreage to account both for where the source rock wouldn't be as cooked and for the net thickness of the source rock. And if you look over at 400 feet of thickness, 50% conversion over 1,641 acres, you get 80 billion. At 75%, you get 120 billion. And so this is the conversion. So if you don't believe those numbers, you don't believe the thickness, whatever, hey, have at it. It's simple arithmetic. You can convert it back to what you think the thickness is. But this is how I approached it. So clearly, when we get the stratigraphic test, we'll be able to determine this exactly. They have promised me as a geochemist to take core and drill with water-based mud. This is such a blessing. Okay. Yeah, okay. So if any of you are familiar with most of the unconventional plays now, they switch to oil-based mud. And boy, it's a nightmare for our geochemists to work through. But so this is truly a blessing and will give us some really exceptional high-quality data. And with that, I'll turn it back to Doug, I guess, in this case.
Thanks very much, Dan. Warren, maybe Scott advance this, or I can do it. Okay, got it.
You want to slide it down?
You'd asked Warren earlier about infrastructure, and this is something that the project is blessed with. Namibia has fantastic infrastructure due to its history, and this slide speaks to that question that Warren asked earlier. You can see on the lower left of the map, this is a map of Namibia. Walvis Bay, the rig will be there. We anticipate first or second week of December. And we've hired a freight forwarder who has experience in Namibia, and they will be tasked with the responsibility of delivering the rig to site, clearing customs. It's a paved road. We've given you a picture there of the main road and the secondary road. Main road's paved all the way through the project area. Secondary road is crushed gravel. And these are first world conditions in terms of transporting oil. As Scott said earlier, the target is conventional oil in the early going, and we hope to be in a position to truck conventional oil. It's only 140 miles to the railhead at Grootfontein, and then from Grootfontein, rail car to Walvis Bay, and then onto the world markets through an oil trader. The plan in terms of advancing and creating value for the project, the plan is to partner in a mid-2021 timeframe. The goal is to get modern logs and modern cores from the 3-well program that we're about to initiate, and with modern logs and modern cores, sit down with the would-be partner community and arrange or negotiate farm-in structures. We believe that the opportunity here and the optionality here is tremendous, and we believe that there will be an opportunity to have a robust conversation with the would-be partner community. And so the goal is to do that, as I say, once the 3-well data is in hand. The service companies, Scott, I think you spoke to this, but one of the benefits that we've been pleasantly surprised by, again, it speaks to the infrastructure, is we are a paved road away from Luanda in Angola, the service companies, Schlumberger, Halliburton, Baker Hughes, are all in Luanda. They're all taking our program pleasantly seriously, and we've been heartened by the discussions we've had with them. And so, I guess to conclude and wrap it up, we clearly have a first mover advantage. We have effectively discovered what we believe will be a new strategic sedimentary basin. We are going to go and drill it. We're excited by the program that we've funded, and we would ask you to keep your eye on us, because we think there's a very, very exciting future, and we're very pleased to have had the chance to tell you about it. Thank you for your time.
Excellent job, guys. That is so not easy, right? I mean, really, like, to make all of that, like, from the data standpoint, interesting is not easy, but the story is amazing. And I'm born in 77, so when anyone shows me a stock that's 77 cents, I get all excited. Like, man, that's a sign, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to get into a little Q&A. We're going to have a hard stop for 1 o'clock. We got 10 minutes. So what I want to do is encourage anyone that has a question for the panel to please raise your hand. Mark LaCour.
So this is actually from the live stream audience. So we have several thousand people watching us right now. So the question is, what are y'all going to do with this? Like, it's an enormous discovery. Where are y'all taking it?
So
Speak to the mic.
So obviously this is a large area, and the team that I'm putting together is being assembled to manage development from exploration through production. So we're putting a team together that can manage the entire life cycle of this basin. Now, are there going to be opportunities to partner? Sure, but we're in this for the long run. We're in this to prove the basin up, provide significant benefits to Namibia, and to be able to provide returns to our shareholders. We need to be the best at this basin, no more than anybody. And so when we see opportunities that aren't quite in our A list, we can talk to partners, and they may see them better than we do. But we're in this for the long run to develop the whole basin.
Okay, guys. Well, I didn't know if, are we good? Are y'all ready for your next question?
Yep.
Or did I interrupt? Okay. So the question was about the feed, the front end engineer design.
What aspect?
I mean, is that what company? I mean, I've done some of these before, and there's the front end engineer, the design of it. Is that just within y'all's own organization, or is that a major?
Yeah,
Do we
there's
have
a lot of
major?
elements to that, and we are a small junior company, so we are using partners. The most basic part of the feed, logistics on the ground, we have a company in Namibia who's been a very good partner. As we grow, obviously, then that feed's going to become a more extensive, and so we'll be looking for partners in that regard as well. Partners meaning companies. I've worked for Halliburton for a long time, and the best relationships we have are long-term relationships with service companies, technical companies. And so that's what I hope to have here.
Thank you, Scott. And so another question from the audience.
Hello. So I actually worked the Karoo in South Africa for Shell. So I'm a geologist, so I might know a little bit more details. Of course, I have to ask a geology question about your exploration drilling program. Do you target kind of purely the stratigraphy, or how do you try to go where? How do you place your wells, and how do you decide to de-risk the play, because it's such a huge area? It's not easy.
I love that question. Thank you. So we have, you saw the paleogeographic map. So there's as a geologist, I've always felt that all geology is local. So as part of our team is Dr. Ansgar Wanke. I don't know if you met Ansgar. He was department chair at the University of Namibia. So we've worked as best we can to get the paleogeography right. But bottom line is that, it's still a very coarse picture. So our first well is meant to be on a structure that also is in a deeper part of the basin, right? And then the second well is meant to be the deepest part of the basin. Third well will be conventional. I didn't mention this, but because we're just finishing the tender, we are going to be shooting starting in January 400 kilometers of 2D. to tie the wells together and to go across. For the geologists in the room, this is a big area. There are multiple subbasins, probably 5 subbasins. We think we've picked the most ideal. We'll learn. We're going to learn a lot. The seismic's going to be critical for tying that together. But yeah, I'd love to talk to you afterwards.
Thank you. It's a great segue. One more question before we close it out.
Has the local government given you any indication of once you prove out your reservoirs development goals or expectations for the speed at which you develop this field?
Well, so in terms of the local government, the government of Namibia or the regional governments, because we're very involved with both. We've from the very beginning we've made sure that we have good partners in Namibia. I don't want to be this company that parachutes in, does everything and leaves. So we already are employing about 100 folks locally, and we have a plan to grow that. Certainly our contracting, John Boudreau over here has been doing our procurement, looking for local first. And there's a good educated workforce in Namibia. It's their resource, so we're bringing them in as needed. Now, as needed so that we can eventually make it a Namibian company. The infrastructure is good, but it's going to have to grow. Drilling wells, for all of you who've been on wells, we need expats to do that. So we're trying to flange up the expats and be able to train local folks. But it's something we're doing from the beginning. Their expectation, the Namibian government's been great, very transparent, very straightforward. And they just see this as a great opportunity to be energy independent and, more importantly, power independent. This part of the world still gets brownouts. People forget about that. But not everybody even has power to keep their lights going 24/7. So this is in an area that would really benefit. So thanks for that question.
Maybe I can augment that if I would. So I don't think I mentioned this, and I should have, that the Namibian government through NAMCOR is our 10% partner in Namibia. They have a 10% carried interest through to commerciality. And significantly, to the earlier discussion of infrastructure, I also failed to mention this earlier. The government in this part of Namibia owns the surface rights as well as the subsurface rights. And so in terms of negotiating, in terms of relationship with responsible resource development, they're front and center in that process. They're very supportive of responsible resource development. As I mentioned in my preamble, there's a strong diamond industry in Namibia. There's a strong uranium industry, and they're very keen to advance the responsible development of the oil and gas industry as well. They have an interest. We recently successfully drilled the water well that we need for the first well at location 6-2, and that was a very smooth process, in part because of the government's support of the program.
Great job, guys. Bill, Dan, Doug, you guys, I mean, this is something that means a lot to all of us, because at the Oil and Gas Global Network, we're always looking for great stories to share. And I think we found it, right? And anyway, with that, let's give them a round of applause, Recon Africa.